Hey everybody, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, that website address for you is theclinicaltrialsguru.com. In my opinion, the best place on the internet for clinical trial content and information. And of course, it is my personal opinion. But prove me wrong. Try to prove me wrong. So anyways, I get so many emails. I love these things. Keep them coming. I'm running a few emails behind, but I'm making these videos as fast as I can. This one is from someone who shall remain anonymous, like most people. Hi Dan, thank you for, I have a question I need help with. I am working on a budget, and they are requesting a document explaining our institution's policy for the application of overhead payments. I am not quite sure how to calculate this or what information they are looking for. Their research department is part of private practice, so I think that complicates the situation. I have done some research on this, but nothing has been real helpful. Alright, so first of all, I've ran into this issue myself several years ago, and I'm going to tell you my solution. I actually pulled up my company's overhead policy here in front of me. And basically, the standard overhead that they'll typically try to give you when negotiating a budget is 15%, maybe 20%. Anything over that, for instance, mine is 30%. So anytime you try to negotiate a higher overhead budget, which you should, by the way, 30%, I've heard some sites do 50%. I've never gotten to that point. I'm sticking at 30%. They will ask you for your overhead policy. And I totally understand, those sites out there that are new and are new to doing research. I mean, you're thinking, what the heck is overhead policy? Well, it's a document. If you really want, the way I made mine for my company, which you can kind of see the logo back there, South Coast Clinical Trials. When I ran into this issue, I Googled the universities near me, and I looked at their overhead policy to see how they're structured. Alright, and I looked at what they charge for, what the overhead policy actually is, and how they can get those things compensated and approved. And I changed a lot of the things to make it apply to an outpatient clinic, but I kept most of the things there. So some of the items, so without giving away your location, because they would probably make it easy to find your site, and therefore you would not be anonymous anymore, Google universities in your area, okay? And Google specifically the university in your area's research overhead policy. If it's a public institution, it should be available. If you can't find yours, Google a university, just any university. Google their overhead policy for research, and then include many of the items that they include. For instance, use allowances and depreciation. So they allow for depreciation for buildings, capital improvements, and the equipment. You can depreciate your equipment over time, just like in real estate. Real estate depreciates, you get the tax incentive for that. Well, in research, if you're doing, especially if some of these studies last 5 years, some of them even longer, you should be able to bill for the depreciation as part of your overhead policy. Interest on debt, so if your site takes out loans or has credit card debt or anything like that to finance the study before you start getting paid, you want to include that in your overhead policy. So any interest on debt could be to finance the building, equipment, salary, study participant stipends, put that in there. Operation and maintenance of the physical research site is another thing, and the equipment as well. Continuing education / site personnel training, you want to make sure that that is in there, so that's self-explanatory. General administration, this is what we generally consider overhead. The copy machine, the lights, the phones, you want to include that in there. Any administration that is employed by your site. And since yours is associated with a private practice, that is still part of the research program if you can prove, or a better word would be if you can persuade them to understand that the private practice is what feeds the research department, especially when it comes to getting study participants, PIs, sub-Is, nurse practitioners, whatever it may be. That is part of your research practice. Even though it's a private practice, they should be treated as part of the same group. The administration that is required to run the private practice, which are all the staff associated with the private practice, should be part of the overhead. And then any sponsored projects administration, so these are costs of separate departments, which is kind of related to your private practice. And then there's something called final rates, which are expenditures that you build into the overhead policy, which are indirect costs for things that you're not sure what they are yet, but you have to take into account certain things that are unknown, and those are usually included in overhead policies. So like I said, Google a university or an academic institution's overhead policy near you. Feel free to use this video and include some of the items I put in there. Maybe you can add some more items based on the uniqueness of your site. So for anyone watching, just make sure you do that. And again, excellent question. I've noticed I did not do a video on this ever. So keep them coming, you guys. And I want to give my Clinical Trial Guru producers a shout out. It's Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Earnhardt Clinical Trials, PTNR, Patrick Stone, Darshan Kulkarni, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, South Coast Clinical Trials, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, and St. Paul Medical Research Center in Miami, Florida. If you want to be a Clinical Trial Guru producer, let me know. And again, back to this overhead policy stuff, don't accept anything less than 30%. 30% should be your minimum from now on, and if they try to argue with you for that, have your general overhead policy ready, and it should work. 30% should be the starting point. Alright, let me know if this works for you. Let me know. More importantly, I'd like to know what the overhead policy of some of your sites are out there, so leave it in the comment section below. Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Email me any questions, Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Thank you very much.